Hey, it's me, Nat C. Jones with Nat Said That, Master Facilitator and Certified Life Coach, here to show you how to live your best life every single day. Now, have you ever spent months, maybe years, just praying and trying to get an answer to this prayer, and you never got an answer? Well, by the end of this video, I will show you how you can receive answers to the prayers you put out there. At least share with you how I've received my answers. Now, in the first video, part 1, I share with you a few tips on how you can get your prayers answered. But in this video, I wanted to do something a little bit different and share with you real testimonies of prayers that I have put out there and how I received answers to those prayers and the lessons that I've learned from my prayer life. Okay, lesson number 1. Sometimes when you pray, you will receive, shortly after you pray, you will receive a strong feeling or an urge that you need to go somewhere or you need to reach out to someone. If that happens, make sure you follow that urge and you go to wherever it is that you feel like you need to go and you reach out to whoever it is that you feel like you need to reach out to, because the answer to your prayer may be there. My personal example of this is when I had just graduated from college and I was looking for a job. And I was having a difficult time finding one. I was just all over the place, career-wise. And I was living with my grandmother. I was broke. And I got this strong desire to go to Bible study at my uncle's church. And I know I had been praying. First of all, I had been praying for a job and praying for God to show me what I needed to do, what kind of work I needed to do, because I was lost. And I was watching TV and all of a sudden I got this really strong urge to go to Bible study. And at that time, I was not very interested in going to church. So I knew that it was God prompting me to go. And so I said, all right, let me just throw on something and go out here. The church was like 5 minutes away from my grandmother's house. So I threw on something. I went and sat in the back of the church. I really did not enjoy the service. And when it was all over, I said, well, that was for nothing. And I was getting ready to get up and leave when this man walked up to me and said, hey, do you want to work at the city? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, the city of Orlando, they're doing some hiring in the planning department. I took his card. I followed the steps that he gave me. He threw me into an interview that I was not prepared for. He told me to meet him at City Hall. I met him there. He said, well, they're doing interviews right now, so just go down there and do an interview. I said, I'm not dressed for an interview. I'm not prepared. I don't even know what the job is. He said, oh, it'll be all right. Just go. And I thought he was crazy. I went in there. I walked into a room. There were 10 men in that room. And they didn't look very happy to see me because I was not dressed for an interview. And I had to just wing it because I had no idea what I was interviewing for. I was so humiliated. One man actually got up and left the room when I was interviewing. And I was like, I wish I could leave too. I pushed my way through it. I was completely embarrassed. I remember crying when I left the interview, like, why did I even go through this? The next day they called me and said that you have the job. And I ended up working for the city of Orlando for 4 years in the planning department, and it was a very fulfilling job. So if I had not followed that prompting that I felt, just all of a sudden I just felt, I need to go over here, that would not have happened. So if you get a strong feeling to do something after you've been praying and you know that feeling did not come from your head, that it had to come from somewhere else, that God is sending you a message and you need to follow. Okay, lesson number 2. After you pray, make sure that you find opportunities to give. Or if you don't find the opportunities, make sure you take advantage of opportunities to give. But always give with wisdom. For anybody who's ever followed me, they understand how I feel about giving just for the sake of giving, and how you can actually give yourself out of a blessing because you're actually depleting yourself of all the resources that God is giving you. There is a way to give, and I'll share that in another video in more detail. But when you give in wisdom, and give when you feel prompted to give. Give with wisdom. So my example of this, again, I was at a church service. This was another time in life when I was working my business, my first business, and I was an entrepreneur and I didn't know what I was doing. I was struggling financially. And this is before I ended up getting the job with the city. And I finally started to figure out a way to make money with my business. So I remember I was doing graphic design and I made $200. So I had a client pay me $200 in cash, gave me 2 C notes, right? And so I went to church, and after church, I ran into this lady that I knew, and she was sharing with me that she was having a little bit of difficulty. Like, oh, I said, how are you doing? She said, oh, things are okay. It's a little tight for me right now. She said, but, I'm believing God that, everything is going to work out. And I'm telling you, I'm a nice person, but I would have never done this if God had not prompted me to do so. In the middle of her talking and sharing with me what she was going through, I just reached, without even thinking, I reached in my pocket and I pulled out one of the $100 bills. It was folded up really tightly, and I put it in her hand. And she actually got upset with me and said, I wasn't telling you that so that you could give me anything. I said, well, just take it. And we finished our conversation, and she went on about her way. She called me later that evening and crying, and she told me, Natalie, I had no idea how much money you had given me. She said, I thought it was maybe $20. And then she shared with me that in that church service that morning, she had her last $5, and she said, God, should I put this in the offering plate, or should I get something to eat with it, or get some gas? And she felt like she needed to put it in the offering plate. And that was the same day that I gave her the $100. So when she got to the grocery store with what she thought was a 20 and it was 100, she was able to actually get groceries for the rest of the week for herself. So later on, when I was going through a rough time and my clients weren't coming together, I didn't have money, and I remember I was sitting in my car, and I had my car insurance bill, and I had my cell phone bill, and I can't remember what the third bill was, and I was just sitting in my car looking at these bills, and I didn't have any money. And I said, okay, God, what am I going to do? I need some help, paying these bills. And right after I said that, my phone rang, and it was her. And at this point, I hadn't seen her in a while. It had been months since I gave her the $100. I said, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. What's going on? And she goes, oh my gosh, things are going great. I'm living in New York now, and I have this great job. She's making 6 figures. I said, well, I'm so happy for you. And she said, well, what are you doing? I said, no, I'm just sitting here, in the car listening to some music. And she said, do you need any money? And I was like, I lied. I said, no, I don't need any money. I'm good. And she said, well, let me put this another way. Do you have any bills that you need to pay that are coming up? And I said, yeah, I have my car insurance bill. I named all the bills that were sitting in my lap. And she says, I want you to take down my credit card number, and I want you to pay those bills. And I just immediately started crying, because I knew I had just prayed and asked God, how am I going to pay these bills? Please help. And within a minute, she calls me from New York. I was in Orlando, and gives me her credit card. She had no idea that I was sitting in my car looking at these bills. She had no idea that I had prayed to God for help. But she showed up. And what it made me think of was, I gave to her when she was in need. And she didn't ask me to. And now she's giving to me when I'm in need. But the gift that she gave me was much bigger. And she told me that whenever I come, I know you're building your business, and I know it can be hard, but I'm proud of you. She said, whenever you need some money, you take this credit card. If you have to pay a bill and you don't have the money, you take this credit card and you pay the bill. And she helped me for the following 6 months. I gave her $100 out of my $200. She gave me thousands of dollars to help me start my business and to support me while I was trying to learn how to become an entrepreneur. So when you pray, and God gives you an opportunity to give, and He whispers in your ear and tells you to give to someone, give and you will receive. It will be like planting a seed, and you will harvest much more than you planted. Okay, lesson number 3. You do not get to decide how your prayer will be answered. If you ask God for something, you have to trust that He's going to get it to you the best way that you could ever receive it. So don't have in your mind exactly how it will happen. Just trust Him that, God, I'm asking you for this, and I know you know the best way to give me what I'm asking for. Remember that all things work together for your good. So even if something seems like it's, falling apart, He's figuring out a way to work it together for your good. Okay, so my example of this was, I was working at the city of Orlando, loving my job, and I remember I had just got off work. I wanted a house. I was praying and praying and praying, asking God for a house. I had an apartment. I had a good job, but I wanted a house because I knew it was a great investment. And so I prayed and I prayed. I was like, God, I just really want a house. Please open a door for me to make money for the down payment or whatever it is that I will need to buy my first house. And fast forward like a month. What, was it even a month? I don't even think it was a month later. I'm driving home from work on the 408. This is highway in Orlando. And I'm driving. I remember I was eating lo mein and I did not have my seatbelt on. And I was playing, the radio was loud, and I was on the phone. So I wasn't driving the safest that I could drive. But anyway, so I'm on the phone like this with this lady, and I'm eating, and I'm driving a stick shift on the highway. And out of nowhere, I look in my rearview mirror, and I saw this Mercedes emblem coming at me super fast. And I remember the lady who I was on the phone with was this church lady. And I remember I yelled out a curse word and said, I have to go. And I hung up the phone. That Mercedes hit me so hard. It hit my car and pushed me to hit the car in front of me because we were in traffic. So I was at a standstill. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how is this lady driving 50, 60 miles per hour and she sees all of this traffic? I mean, everybody was at a standstill and I looked in the rearview mirror and I remember seeing the emblem. I remember seeing her face and that she was looking this way, but she was heading towards my car. She hit me. She caused me to hit the car in front of me. The car in front of me was an undercover cop car. He turned the lights on. I was like, oh my God. So I quickly put my seatbelt on. He came to my door to ask me if I was okay. I had lo mein all over the car because I told you I was eating. I'm just sitting there shaking. And he saw that the lady had hit me. So he told me, he said, listen, you know you can get money from this. And I was like, no, I didn't know. He was like, yeah. He said, I'm gonna file a claim. And he was like, and you need to do the same thing. I was like, I wasn't thinking about it. I said, well, I feel okay. He said, well, you feel okay now, but you don't know how you're gonna feel a year from now. So make sure you call a lawyer. And I was like, okay. I'm like 23 or something years old. And I was like, okay, the cop told me to call a lawyer because he's calling one, so that's what I'm gonna do. And long story short, I called a lawyer, and the lawyer got me a settlement for about $17,000, which was my down payment. That $17,000 helped me to pay the down payment for the house that I wanted, and it also helped to pay the rehab costs because I remember my first home was a foreclosure and it had a lot of rehab costs. God works in mysterious ways, and when you pray and ask him for something, you just never know how he's going to give it to you. But it was a blessing. My pain in that accident and all the stress of the accident ended up working out for my good. That's what I mean. All things will work together for your good. If you have the faith and you're praying and you're believing that God is going to answer your prayers, look out because he can bless you 100 different ways. Lesson number 4. As soon as you feel the unction or the urge to pray, when you're in the crisis, when your emotions are high, pray right then. Don't wait until you calm down. Don't wait until you sober up or whatever it is that's going on, whatever mess you got yourself into. Do not wait. Pray immediately. Pray genuinely, and God will hear your prayer. Okay, so my example of this prayer is, I'm going to get a little bit personal. I was in a relationship with a guy for a couple of years and it wasn't going anywhere. He was a commitment phobe. And deep down in my heart, I really knew I wanted to be married and have a family. But like many single women, I would lie to myself and say, that's not really what I want. I'm cool, just hanging out and just dating, because I didn't believe that I could have it. And so I was dating a guy who actually benefited from my fear of actually going for what I wanted, and he was wasting my time. And so I remember we had just finished having our special time together. It was late at night and he got up to leave. When he left, I realized I want more than this. I said it out loud. I said, I want more than this. And I started to cry. And I remember in that moment, I had his smell on me. We had just finished having sex. Okay, we're grown. I had his smell on me. I was naked laying in the bed, and I started to cry, and I said, I want more than this. And in that moment when my emotions were high, I reached out to God and I prayed and I said, God, help me to let this man go. Because I had tried to break up with him probably 5 or 6 times. And every time I broke up with him, he knew exactly how to get me back. And I knew I wanted more, but he had his hooks in deep. I said, God, he has his hooks in deep. I said, I've tried to end this on my own and I have not been successful. I really need your help to let him go because I want more. And then I prayed and I prayed and I said, God, you know, I was really just having a conversation with him. I remember I was just kind of laying on the edge of the bed. And I said, God, the next man that comes into my life, I'm asking that he will love you more than I do. Because in that relationship, that guy was not spiritual at all. And our relationship was completely just about having fun, having sex, you know, traveling. And it was fun for like 6 months. But after a while, it was like, this is all we're going to do? I'm ready to build something. And he was not. So I said, God, please just keep any man away from me that I would be attracted to that's not good for me. I just need a break. And I don't want men in my face right now. I said, help me to let this guy go. And I said, the next guy that approaches me, I want him to have you all over him. I want him to have God all over him. I want him to be a godly man. So fast forward, I go to sleep that night after saying that prayer. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I just blocked my boyfriend at the time. I blocked him from my phone. I blocked him from my social media and my email, because those are the ways he was always able to access me after I broke up with him. I blocked him from all that, and I remember I fell back asleep. And the next morning when I got up and started my day, I was cleaning up, I was singing hymns, I was happy, and I wasn't thinking about him at all. And I would have forgotten all about him if he hadn't showed up at my door. I heard a huge knock on my door, bang, bang, bang on the door. I go and open the door, and when I saw him, that's when I remembered that he existed. And he's like, what's going on? I've been calling your phone, and it says it's off, and do you need some money for the bill? I said, no, it's not off. I blocked you from calling my phone, and it's over. And he was like, what? I said, yeah, it's over. He said, well, we had plans for breakfast today. And I realized we were supposed to go to breakfast. I had forgotten all about it, and I would have never forgotten that because I was addicted to this man. But after that prayer, God broke that, and he broke the soul ties, and I was over it immediately. And it was a very dramatic scene after I told him I wanted it to be over, or that it was over. But fast forward, God really helped my heart to heal. I did not miss him this time. When we broke up, I didn't miss him. He had no way to access me. And I was able to get over it and move on with my life. And 2 weeks after I broke up with this man, God answered the second part of my prayer, which was, give me a godly man, help me to be with, to meet the kind of man that you want me to have. 2 weeks later, I met the man that would later become my husband at a church service. And so my husband is exactly what I prayed for. I prayed for a man that loves God. My husband's a minister. He is he's someone who, there's some people who, you know, talk about God and they say all the right things when they're around the right people, but when they go home, they're completely different. I can't stand that. And that's one of the reasons I stopped going to church for a really, really long time. I don't like fake and phony people. Don't put on a show. Like, be real. But this man, I can tell you, he really loves God, and he really is serious about God. And my husband reads the Bible when he's using the bathroom. He reads the Bible when I'm watching How to Get Away with Murder on ABC. I turn to look at him, and he's reading the Bible. Like, his relationship with God is extremely important to him, and it's not just something that he puts on the show for people when he's at church or wherever out. That's who he is, and I respect him for that. And because of that, he can lead me spiritually, because if he didn't have a relationship with God, he couldn't help me in my relationship with God. So I asked God to give me someone who would bring me closer to him instead of pull me away from him, and that's exactly what he did. Okay, lesson number 5, and this is the last one for this video. Unless God tells you no, never stop believing that your prayer will be answered. Listen to me. There will be times where you feel like the prayer has been crushed. Something happens in your life where you thought the prayer was going to be answered, and then something awful happens and it's like it's crushed. Unless God has actually told you no, and you feel that I'm not supposed to have this, what I'm praying for, you keep believing. That's your job, to continue to believe no matter what your eyes see until you see your prayer answered. So my example of this in my life was the most difficult part of my life thus far. I have always wanted children. I wanted children more than I wanted to be married, because I just loved, not so much loved kids, it was just, I love the idea of being a mother. And my husband and I found out that we were pregnant, and it was with a boy. And I was so happy. I was so excited about being a mom. I had prayed to have children and prayed about being a mom. And so I was excited that my prayer had been answered, because I got married later in life, so I didn't really know how fertile I would be and if I could have children, and it happened. I was 5 months pregnant when I ended up having a miscarriage. They didn't even call it a miscarriage. I had a condition that I was unaware of that made it difficult for me to carry a baby in past the second trimester. And so my cervix opened and the baby started to come out. And so they had to rush me to the hospital. I was 5 months pregnant, and I spent a week in the hospital, and I lost the baby. And it was the most painful experience of my life. And I still had to push the baby out. I held the baby. His name was Mike. I held him in my arms. He was gone. And I remember thinking, why would you allow me to get this far just to take what I asked for away from me? I felt like prayer was crushed. I said, this doesn't make sense. And so I remember being in the hospital. My husband was next to me in the cot, and we were in the dark. And again, you know, he was changing my bedpan. He was wiping my backside. He was taking care of me. The nurses didn't even have to do it, because God gave me the kind of man that I needed for every struggle that I would have in my life. And I was just sitting there in a daze, and I just started praying. I started telling God how much I loved him, and that I know that everything happens for a reason. All things work together for my good. Just help me to deal with however this turns out. And then I found out the baby was gone, and it was hard, and we cried. And I didn't think I would be able to have children again. And everything rushed through my mind. Like, why did I wait so long to get married? Why didn't I just get pregnant in my 20s? Like, why did I wait until my 30s to try to have a baby? And so many terrible things just rushed through my mind. But my relationship with God compelled me to believe that the prayer was still going to be answered. And working with doctors and understanding procedures and things that could help me keep a baby, I got pregnant again twice. I lost one baby, but I ended up getting 2 more, and those were not planned. And I had 2 lovely girls. One we named Makai and one Avery. And again, my prayers were answered after a painful experience. I still got what I prayed for, because I continued to believe. And so I just want you to know, if you prayed for something and it seemed like it was about to happen and then everything fell apart, I want you to know that unless God says no, that you're not supposed to have this, and you're praying out of order, continue to believe, especially if you're praying for something good. Continue to believe that you can have it. I got double for my trouble. I only really wanted 1 child because I'm an only child, but God gave me 2, and it has been such a blessing to my life to have my girls, and they are answered prayers. Well, that's it, everybody. I hope that this video was helpful. I hope that hearing my testimony encourages you to continue to pray, and to pray with confidence, and believe that God wants to give you all of the desires of your heart that are good and that are in his will. I'm really excited about your growing prayer life, and I hope and pray that you'll be confident and have the faith to see your prayers answered. If you have any questions about prayer and any questions about this video and want some more details, shoot me a message in inbox or email me, or however you are receiving this video, whatever social media platform, and I would love to share with you exactly who I pray to and how I pray, and I would love for you to learn to pray the way that I pray. So if this video was helpful, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also find me on Instagram and Facebook and like and follow. To email me, you can send me a message to natsaidthat@gmail.com. Finally, if there's any other topic that you would like me to make a video about, please make a comment below about what the topic is, and also share with me what you liked about this video and what you learned about prayer that was helpful. Well, that's it. Now you know how to pray, and you should be praying every day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Nat Said That.